Hello, sorry for the late start. Just had a few technical difficulties. All right, now before we get into today's lecture content, Nick made an important Avenue post that I'm just supposed to go over for a couple of minutes. So if I navigate to Avenue to Learn and hit the COMPSCI 1MD3 announcements button, we can see the latest Avenue post. So as part of some accommodations in this course to make it a bit easier on you guys, Nick will now be dropping the lowest assignment grade in your actual cumulative course grade. In addition, we'll be going through the assignments to reduce the number of questions you need to get done. And in addition, we're going to try to make the COMPSCI 1MD3 midterms not as tough. At least Nick gives that a pinky promise. Moreover, for all of the assignments, you now have a 3-day grace period, and this is applied retroactively to assignment A1. And then finally, in conclusion, so I imagine CompSci 1MD3 is not the only course you may be struggling a bit with due to the present circumstances. So if you're struggling in other courses too, feel free to reach out to the profs and TAs to let them know you need more accommodation and such to succeed. And the people and faculty at Mac are really accommodating. So if you just let them know what your present issue is, they will most likely be more than accommodating. All right. Yeah. Okay, so then today, like usual, you can navigate to the Avenue announcements button to see the announcements and find the slides for today's class. And if you open them up, it'll first mention the date of midterm 1, which is on October 4th. And now the best way to prepare for midterm 1 is just to either do the Jupyter Hub assignments again or to do the coding back questions again. So we already did some prep for assignment 1 last week when we got a handle on a few questions that we already looked at, like the counting dogs question. So we can do some more complicated ones this time. Okay, so let's do the last 3. Now, these questions primarily deal with nested lists and nested loops, just to let you know, in addition to other concepts that we talked about in class. Okay, so the first question is, which will be question 7 that we're doing today, takes a number as an int and then outputs a string in the Roman numerical representation. All right, so let's suppose the input is 39. The output would be xxxix. So you have to make a function that accepts an int parameter as input, and the output is a string. Now, just in case you're not familiar with Roman numerals, we have this table here that you can look at that might help you convert between the two. Okay, so you guys can get started on the Roman numerals question. And then if you guys aren't familiar with Roman numerals, I'll go into more depth in that in just 1 or 2 minutes. But considering that this question is generally a bit tougher than what we've looked at before, I'll give you guys until 10:50 to solve the question, okay? So you have 10:50 to get question number 7 done. All right, let me just check the comments, and then I'll talk about Roman numerals in a bit, just in case that's something you're not familiar with. Yeah, sorry that I took so long with getting this up. Yeah, so let's start with question number 7. Okay, so just in case you just hopped on the stream right now, we're currently taking up question number 7. You have until 10:50 to get this question done. You wish there was one of what, Christina? Yeah, so noticed how in Adika's class, he would play smooth jazz during class. I guess I'll try to pull some up that can pass the time more easily. Uh, if you guys have any other music recommendations, I can play that too. Oh, sorry, Viral. Yeah, so we're doing question number 7 right now. You have until 10:50 to get it done. Yeah, I know this is a long break, so I'll play some music too to pass the time. Okay. Any hints? Yeah, I know this is a tough one. Okay, so I imagine the toughest aspect about this question is maybe a lack of familiarity with Roman numerals. So I can go over how those work a bit, if that helps. So you'll notice that this question that I posted in the slides is the same as the practice midterm question that you'll find on Avenue. It's located near the bottom, I think. Yeah. So this is the harder Roman numerals question. There's an easier one up here, but I thought we could do the harder one first. Hey, cool. Yeah, so imagine like the most difficult aspect with Roman numerals is that you're not familiar with how these numerals work. So I can give a brief mini tutorial if that helps us understand the content. Okay, so I can just maybe present this in full view to make this a bit bigger. Yeah, so let's suppose that we wanted to convert number 1984 into Roman numerals? Well, it's really simple. All I would have to do is I would have to break down the number 1984 into a smaller into an increment for each digit. So we have one space for 1,000, one for 900, one for 80, and one for 4. And then I can just convert each number individually into Roman numerals. And I can do so by looking them up in the chart. Right, so when I'm breaking up Roman numerals, I'm going to look at the number 1984, and I'm going to see what the biggest Roman numeral that can fit in 1984 is. So obviously, the biggest Roman numeral that can fit in 1984 is 1,000, which is M, which means M is going to be my first number. And now I have 984 left that I need to represent. So then I have to see what is the biggest number that will fit in 984. And the biggest number that fits is 900, which is CM. So CM is my next character. And now I have 84 left that I need to represent. So now I have 84 left that I need to represent. And I know that the biggest number I can fit in 84 is, if I just go down this list one at a time, it is, well, it's not 90 because 90 is too big. Right, and then we can actually fit in L, and we can actually fit in the 2x is 2 to get 80 in total. And then I have just 4 left, and I can fit in the IV parameter for 4. Cool. Okay, so with that in mind, we can start coding this question. So I can actually start off by just copying this exact same data structure in Python, which I imagine I'll find pretty useful. So I'm going to open up my Python 3. So I'm going to open up my Python 3. So I'll type in idle Python 3.8. And I wait for it to load. Cool. And I'm going to make a new Python file. And the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to copy in this data structure into Python. So I'm going to save my Python file. We'll save it as Roman in a relevant place. Okay. And so the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to make a similar nummap data structure in Python that I can then reference when converting base 10 numbers to Roman numeral numbers. So I'll say nummap is equal to, and then I'm going to make a list. And the list will have several tuple elements. So it starts off with 1,000 and M. And then we have 900 and CM. And then we have 400 and CD. And then we have 100 and C. And then we have 90 and XC. And then we have 50 and L. And then we have 10 and X. Oh, I missed one. Between 50 and 10, we have 40 and XL. Then we have 10 and x. And then we have 9 and ix. Then we have 5 and b. And then we have 4 and iv. And finally, we have 1 and I. And let me just double check to make sure I didn't copy any of these wrong, or else my converter is not going to work correctly. Thousand M, 900 cm, 400 CD, 100 C, 90 XC, 50 L, 40 XL, 10 X, 90 IX, 5V, 4 IV, 1 I. Awesome. Cool. Okay, so we've made our data structure that maps the conversion of a base 10 number to a Roman numeral equivalent. So now we have to implement the same algorithm we see here in our code. And it's not that tough to do. Essentially, all I have to do is first get some input, or first make my function, which is called def Roman. And this function has one parameter as input, which is the num value, which is the int input of the number that we're converting. And all I have to do is take num, and I have to convert that number into a Roman numeral. So I have to go through this list, and I have to see what is the biggest number in this list that fits within the past num value. And that biggest number will be the first letter in my Roman numeral. And then I have to check for the difference, the remaining value of num. Again, what is the biggest value in this list that fits in the Roman numeral? And I just repeat this process until my num is equal to 0 and fully represented. So obviously, we can quickly do this with a while loop. So I'm going to start off by making my blank string, which I'll call the Roman conversion, and I'll make that equal to just null to begin with. And then I'll say while my inputted number is greater than 0, what I'm going to do is I'm going to iterate through the num map. Now, how can we iterate through a list? What's the easiest way to get that done? With a for loop, of course. So if I said for I in num map, I would iterate through the list elements one at a time. I can actually say I, comma, r, and that will specifically call the two tuple elements one at a time. So that simplifies our code just a little bit. And all I'm going to do is I'm going to say while my num is greater than equal to I, we're going to be just adding on the Roman conversion of that letter. So we'll say Roman conversion plus equals the R value, which is the second value in the tuple. And we'll, of course, subtract the num from whatever value we're adding to the Roman numeral. So num minus equals I. And then I just will return the finished Roman numeral. Okay. All right. Cool. So I can save my code and I can take a look at the comments very quickly. I'm missing 500. No, that's not good. 90. Let's see. So 500, that is D. And okay, if I go here, I have 500, B, comma, okay. All right, thanks guys. Okay, and so now I can run my code and I can test it out accordingly. All right, so of course, if I just run and save the code like this, nothing will happen, or actually I get this tuple error. That's weird. Oh, I'm sorry. And I can say Roman conversion plus equals R without the quotation marks. It's a bit silly of me, my apologies. But I still get, and then I get another issue here with the 40 XL. What did I do? Oh, my apologies. And I forgot a comma. So those are two things we should not be forgetting. Okay, and now if I run the code, it runs fine, but of course I haven't called the function yet, so I can test out my code by calling the function. So I'm going to just say print out the output of Roman when I pass in the correct conversion. So I think the test we had was, you can do 1984, or you can do something else too. Right, let's suppose I type in 999. And then I can just run this code. And I get the following Roman numeral. And I can just test this out to make sure it's correct. So I type number to Roman numeral. Or I can just check out 1984 too, I guess, just to make sure that one's correct. So I pass in 1984. I should get the same output. Okay, and that looks the same to me. So if I go to the slides, cool. Yeah, so I get MC, ML, XXX, IV. And likewise, I get the same output with the Roman numerals. Awesome. Now, the key thing, of course, is to make sure you don't forget to put a comma in your list. Otherwise, that might cause issues. But yeah, there we go. So that's the Roman numerals question. So I know that one was a bit tougher. The practiced midterm questions you find on Avenue, they are a bit tougher than coding that and the Jupyter Hub assignments. But I'm confident we can still get them done. Yeah, thanks for the comma, guys. And yeah, that was just a mistake on my part, URL. Yeah, so for loops are best for iterating through list structures. So yeah, I can actually demonstrate that really quickly, if that helps. So I can make a new piece of code. And I can save this in a new program. And I can say, for example, if I type in for I in nummap, that will just print out all of the elements of I one at a time. Right, so I can run this code, and it prints out all of the elements of I one at a time. Now, if I wanted to print out the individual elements, I believe with a tuple, I absolutely can just use the indexing property. So I can write I0, and I can write I1 to print out each of the individual elements. So that is absolutely an option. But Python is so easy and so Pythonic that there are much easier ways to get stuff like this done. Like, for example, if I just type in for I and then comma R in range map, then Python will know that the element I'm looking at is has two elements at least in the nested structure. and it'll call both those elements at the same time. Cool. And then I can run my code. Awesome. Likewise, if I had 3 elements for each value of the list, I could pass in 3 variables here, and I would be able to call them all at once in Python. Cool. Yeah, so if you have any, can you explain question 5 on assignment 2? The wording is pretty confusing. Yeah, sure, I can take a look at question 5. We should have some extra time today. Okay, let's just get the greatest common divisor question done. Okay, so, and then we'll take up question 5 in assignment 2, all right? So here it says we have to create a function GCD that takes 2 ints, n and m, as input, and both n and m will always be greater than 0. So our function that we're making, GCD, has to output the greatest common divisor of the 2 values. So for example, if our input is 12 and 20, the output would be 4. Okay, so take 5 minutes to get this done. I'll take it up, and then I'll talk about that question that that VRAL brought up. Okay. Okay, so we have until 11:07 to get this question done. Then we'll take it up, get it done by 11:10 hopefully, and then we can take up the question that you guys were concerned about in Avenue. Okay, so let's take up this greatest common divisor question. So this one is pretty easy, especially in Python, because we can use built-in Python functions to reduce the workload of the question. So I'm going to make a new Python program, and I'm going to save it. I'll save it as GCD. Cool. So in this question, we have to make a function called def GCD. And the function has two input parameters. They are, we can call them n and m to represent the two numbers that we're passing in. Okay. And the first thing that I want to do is I want to find the smaller of the two numbers n and m. Now I absolutely can use an if statement to figure out which of the two numbers are smaller. But instead, I can just use the min function in Python. And what the min function does is if I pass in two input parameters or as many input parameters as I want, let's suppose n and m, min will return the smaller of the two values. Like if I pass in 2 and 5, min will return a 2. So I can make min equal to a variable. Let's call it smaller. There we go. And now all I have to do is iterate through the numbers one at a time until I find the greatest common denominator in that range. So I can do this with a for loop once again, but I'll use a for loop a bit differently than we've used in the past. So previously in this class, we've used for loops to iterate through lists, right? So for example, if I have the list x, which just has a bunch of elements, I would just write for e or for element in x, and I would access those elements one at a time. So, oh, sorry. I would say print e, not print x. There we go. Now, in addition to this, we can use something called the range parameter to use a for loop more like a while loop. So what I can do is I can say for I in range, and if I say 10, for I in range 10, and what that is going to do is it's going to allow I to iterate from 0 to 10. As we can see if I print out the I value. Awesome. And I can use a for loop in this way to get a series of numbers between some defined range. So range does have a few properties similar to string indexing that we can deal with. So if I say for I in range, I add the bracket, you can see there are three parameters that I can deal with. So the first parameter is the beginning of the range. So I can say it's 5. The second parameter is the end of the range. Let's say it's 20. So this will, by default, make I iterate through all the numbers from 5 to 20, with 5 being inclusive, square bracket, and 20 being exclusive, round bracket. And the default step size is 1, but I can also change that to some other value if I like. And now I can print out all of the I values that I like. There we go. Awesome. So I can use this technique to iterate from the smaller range to 0 to get the greatest common denominator, because I know the greatest common denominator by default must be smaller or equal to the smallest number of n and m. Right, so I can say for I in range, and my range will be from the smaller number to 0, and we're going to be incrementing downwards, obviously. And all I'll be saying I want to go through every number from the smallest of n and m to 0, and I want to find the greatest common denominator within this range. So next, I'll be saying, or checking, if my n value and m value are both multiples of I. So what operand can I use to check to see if both n and m are equally divisible or multiples of I? I can use the modulus operand. So I can say if n mod I is equal to 0, and if m mod I is equal to 0, well, if both of these values are equal to 0, then I know that this is a common denominator, and it must be the greatest common denominator the first time this happens, because we're starting from the bigger numbers and going down. So I can return I as is. Okay, let's test this out. So I will print out now the greatest common denominator of 20 and 12. Okay, and we can run the code, and we get 4. Awesome. Are you guys familiar all with the modulus operand, by the way? So the modulus operand is just a tool to get the remainder when we divide two numbers. So for example, if I do 20 mod 7, so what this will return is it will return the remainder when 20 is divided by 7. So we know that 20 goes into 7 twice, twice to be 14, and there's a remainder of 6. Now, likewise, we can use the modulus operand between any two numbers to get the difference. If a number is wholly divisible by another, then the modulus is 0. So for example, if I do 10 mod 2, then the modulus would be 0. Awesome. Yeah, so modulus is definitely generally on the first midterm. It's been on the first midterm for the past 2 semesters. So I'd make sure to know how to use this tool. Like a question is probably going to ask you to use the modulus operand. Does anyone not understand how modulus works in general, like inside or outside of coding? If you do, I can go into this in more detail. Okay, if not, in the meantime, I'll go through that question that Viral asked for. Okay, Arun, do you want more detail about the modulus operand? Okay, anyway, you can respond to that, I guess, if you like, Arun. And in the meantime, I will turn on my VPN and I'll look at that question you were talking about. Okay. And I will go to Jupyter Hub. Is the music distracting, or do you guys enjoy it, by the way? I'm genuinely curious. Let me know if it's distracting and I'll just turn it off. Okay, so I'll navigate to Jupyter Hub and I will log in. And this was an assignment 2. And I hope the question's not done already. Sorry, these answers completed. I'm trying to get an empty notebook. Okay, cool. So what's question number 5? Yeah, so I think the main thing here was the just I guess the wording of the question because it's a long one. But yeah, all that happens is we have a population that has some defined growth characteristics. So generally, the population will grow by 2 in a week, except unless there's a full moon. In that case, the population will grow by 3. All right, and so all we have to do is make some Python code that given an initial population n, some number of weeks, and and the number of weeks till a full moon will then just will then just return the population every week for the number of weeks given. Okay, so if you guys want, I guess I can start coding this question. But I think this one is pretty, relatively self-explanatory. I think it just was the wording that was confusing. Okay, so if I'm going to have to return a tuple at the end, I can just make an empty tuple to begin with, t, and I can say that's equal to like 2 square brackets, and then I can just change my return value to t, because that's what I'll be returning at the end. And then all I have to do is I have to have a while loop that continues for how many weeks exist. So I can just say while my week parameter is greater than 0. And of course, then I can just decrement week 1 iteration at a time. I can say week minus equals 1. Or I can, just to make this a bit more clear, I can say week is equal to week minus 1. Awesome. And yeah, I just have a very simple, if else case where I say that if the moon value, if it's a moon week that week, right, I can say m is equal to 0. In that case, I would have to grow the population by 3 times. So I would say n is equal to n times 3. And of course, then I have to reset m to be 3. So else it's not a moon week. In that case, population only grows by multiple of 2. So I'd say n is equal to n times 2. And I say that I decrement the moon value by 1. So I say m is equal to m minus 1. And of course, m will continue decrementing until it's equal to 0. And in that case, we reset it to 3, and the process repeats for however many weeks there are. And then at the end, you just have to return the tuple that shows the growth per week. And I think we can do that part. All we have to do is append to the tuple a different week population. Okay, so I think this is good enough to get you guys started. Do you guys feel like you know how to get this done now? Okay, so let's start with Michelle's question. So do you mind explaining again after the meeting of the 0 and -1 for the range divisor question? Yeah, sure. A snurgle has one fatal flaw in the reproduction cycle. The snurgle will always die during childbirth due to this population not being included, but not include the snurgles from previous generations. Does it say that? Oh, let me check the description. Uh, where is it talk about them dying, though? Yeah, I don't see anything about the snurgles dying. Is this a different question, Viral? Or I don't see anything about them dying. Um, yeah, I guess if they don't talk about the death in the question, we can assume they continue living. But yeah, it's just really basic. Each snurgle has 2 children in the per week. If it's not a full moon week, if it is a full moon week, then each snurgle has 3 children. So either the snurgles increase by twice or increase by 3 times, just depending on if or if not it's a full moon week. So all we have to do is an if statement saying if it's a full moon week, double the population. Sorry, if it's a full moon week, triple the population. If it's not a full moon week, just double the population. And just keep on doing that for however many weeks they want us to track the population for. So I wouldn't, don't. The question you're so about this question that you oversee and overlook the issues you have to consider. I don't think it talked about death at all, from what I read in this question. Yeah, so this question is not totally done because I'm not allowed to totally finish it off for you guys, but this is the main crux of it. So now all you have to do is record the population for each week in the tuple. Right, so n is going to increase by some value each week. You have to put that in the tuple to store it, and then just return the finished tuple at the end. Okay. Oh, you said they die on Avenue? Ah, okay. Let me go to Avenue and take a look. Yeah. So it's so wow, I didn't even consider the Snurgle population being considered. So I guess that that shows I was too quick reading the question. Okay, so I think that doesn't change the answer at all then, right? Because yeah. So I think what he's trying to say is you can just assume that the population either doubles or triples. So just either times 2 or times 3. Right? So don't worry about anything else. Yeah, I think that's what Mark was trying to get at. So you can either assume the population increases by 3 times or increases by 2 times. Because generally that's how these questions work. So I just kind of assumed that too when reading. This is a really common like leak code question or like template question that like it's the same code but just different descriptions or problems. So yeah, either assume that the population triples or doubles if that simplifies things. So don't worry about babies and like how that affects the existing population. Just if it's a moon week, the population triples. If it's not a moon week, the population doubles. Okay, so either n is equal to n times 3 or n is equal to n times 2. Does that answer your question, Virel? Okay, so we'll talk about the for loop too. Yeah, so I guess a better way or an easier way to interpret the question is that if it's a moon week, the population triples. If it's not a moon week, the population doubles. That's just think about it like that, period. Okay. Okay, let's talk about the for loop thing. Then I guess that's it for today. Okay, so let's go into more detail on for loops. And to do that, we first have to talk about ranges. If I type in range and 10, what that does is it makes a range of values from 0 to 10. So if I say x is equal to range of 10, if I say it's like range of 1 to 10, and I get x as my range. And so this is actually, the range is essentially a list object, right? So I can call on the individual elements one at a time. So essentially what range does is it makes a similar data structure as a list, right? And so now when I make my for loops are just for iterating through a list. But if I want to iterate through a series of numbers, I can just make a range for those numbers and then iterate through that range one at a time. right? So I can say for I in X, which is an existing range, or I can say for I in some new range from 1 to 20. And then I print I. Okay, so you'll notice that for the range, that the first number is inclusive. So we're starting with 1, and we go up until 20. So the second parameter of the domain is exclusive. So we're including 1 in our range, but 20 is not included in our range. Okay? And in addition to this, range has a property that lets us define the step size. So right now, by default, the step size is 1. I can change the step size to, let's say, 4, and that will change the range that I'm iterating through. Okay. Yeah, so I guess the thing maybe that the student was a bit confused by is they were wondering why 1 was inclusive and 20 was exclusive, why the beginning of the domain was inclusive and the ending of the domain was exclusive. And that's just because generally people want to have like if I type in for I in range 10, you want there to be 10 numbers that you iterate through. So in order to do that, one of the ends has to be exclusive. But yeah, so just keep in mind when you're making a for loop that if I say for I in range 100, I'm going to print out, I'm going to access the numbers from 0 to 99, from 0 to 1 less the length of the range. Okay, so let's take a look at the comments. Yeah, so does not matter what type of loops you use or what type of code you use, as long as the code has the correct output, it's all automatically graded. As long as the code has the correct output for the test cases, you will get full marks. So keep in mind there are hidden test cases too that you can check against. So you have to make sure your code works robustly for all of the needed problems. Okay, so does Michelle still have the question? Okay, so I see no new comments. I hope that answered your question, Michelle. With the 0 and -1 in the range function. Okay, so let's go back to that question specifically. Yeah, so with this for loop, I'm just iterating from the smaller of the n and m values. So let's say I put in 12 and 20. The smaller would be 12. And I'm just iterating from 12 to 0, and I'm going one step downwards at a time. Right? If I went one step upwards, I wonder what would happen then actually. Would the for loop just not cease? Okay, let's do this experiment then. Okay. Yeah, I guess maybe you're right. Do we need to have the -1 in the for loop? Okay, so let's say I said for I in range of 20 to 12, and I type in 1. So what's going to happen then? Is my for loop just not going to end? Or nothing happens because then it goes out of the range. Ah, I see, I see. Yeah, so that's a very interesting question, Michelle. So yes, we need to specify the step size still. It doesn't assume by default to go in the correct direction from 20 to 12. We have to tell Python what the correct step size is. And now it knows to go in the correct direction. Yeah, that's a good logic question, Michelle. Yeah. Yeah, I'll make sure to. I think they should put that like on the midterm or something, or that'd be a cool thing to test with. Okay, anyways, so midterm is coming up soon. Good luck on it. So, just best way to practice, in my opinion, it's not even doing the. I think the best gauge for difficulty is the Jupyter Hub questions. So I would just do your assignment questions again to practice. You might find that the Avenue questions are a bit tougher. So if you can't get them all, or if there's any confusion, don't panic, don't freak out. Just make sure you can do the assignment questions, and you should be ready for the midterm. So for the midterm, you should know how to do for loops, while loops, strings, and lists. So if you know those 4 things, you should be good. Essentially, you'll just be asked about how to make a bunch of specific functions. Just imagine that it's an assignment all over again. Okay? All right, any additional questions? If not, I will log off. Can you briefly go over question 11 on the practice midterm test? Yes, because yeah, sure. Let's go over question 11. Okay. Question 11. I hope it's an easy one. Darn, okay. I clicked the wrong. Yeah, there we go. Question 11. Oh yeah, this one. Okay, so yeah, I remember I had to help a student with this one last semester. So this one's not too bad. So in the following number, the four adjacent digits that give the largest product are 9989, which have the largest product of 5832. So all we have to do is write a function that takes as input a large, base 10 number like this as a string, and outputs the product of the 12 adjacent digits that have the greatest product. Okay, so you can make some assumptions in this question. One is that the number will have a minimum of 12 digits. And then all you have to do is you just have to look at the string, 12 characters at a time, and then just find the greatest product in that string. So yeah, it's just a basic while loop. But if you're still not sure how to get this question done, I'm not sure who asked it, but if anyone's not sure how to get this question done, just email me and I'll send you the solution. But yeah, it's not too tough. So all we have to do is take our string, look at our string, 12 digits at a time or 12 characters at a time, and then just see which 12 characters give us the greatest product. All right, so it's just a basic, simple while loop or for loop. I think we can use a for loop for this, right? So in the same way that with the Romanish question, right, we had a for loop that looked at 2 characters at a time. We can just have a for loop that looks at 12 characters at a time, and then just see like which range has the greatest product or which iteration has the greatest product, right? So I can just have some like greatest variable, and I can only change that variable whenever the for loop gives a greater product. Anyways, if you're not familiar with how to do this question, just email me and I'll send you the solution. Does that sound good? Sounds Gucci? Okay. Yeah, so I think that's all the things I wanted to talk about today. So practice for the midterm, best way to practice, just do the assignment questions over and over again. Okay? And it's online, right? So it shouldn't be that bad. Can you share a code for Q10? I did Q10. Yeah, so here's the Roman code. So you can take a screenshot or copy it. Okay, so I hope you had the time to take a screenshot, Michelle. Shouldn't it be the other way around though, like the range from 0 to smaller, -1? Well, so it's not the smallest value, then bigger value, Michelle. It's just the first number that you want to start with, then the number you want to end with, right? So I want to start my range at the smaller number, then go downwards to 0, right? If I had 0 to smaller, then that would be the inverted range, right? Instead of it going 10, 9, 8, 7, it would go 1, 2, 3 to 10. And that's not the range we want, Michelle. So what I would advise you to do is I'd advise you to change my code and try flipping the range values for GCD and then see what happens. Yeah, I mean, you can do it. So Matayab, any way you get this question done, as long as the output is correct, that works. So if you wanted to flip it around, that works too. But if you go from like 0 to smaller, that's going to go like incrementing like 1, 2, 3, 4, right? I want to go decrementing downwards. So I want to start with the bigger value, then go to 0. I don't want to start from 0, then go to the bigger value, right? Okay, so if there are no new questions, I'm going to log off then. Yeah, so I hope that helped you, Koa, me going over question 11. But if it didn't help you, totally understand. Just email me and I'll send you the solution. Okay. And if you don't get the solution, we can just talk about it in more detail. And that offer is open to anyone. My email is accessible on Avenue. Okay, so I'm going to log off now, if that's cool with you all, if I don't see any new questions. Okay, so I'm going to log off. Good luck on the midterm, guys. Bye.